Hey Rudy, so today I'm here to do my March wrap up with you guys, go over all the books that I read in the month of March. So I read 10 books in the month of March, and I also DNF'd too. So I guess we'll start off with the DNFs because, but that stands for do not finish if you didn't know. And basically I started these books, I didn't finish them, I don't count them as my read books. So as far as did not finish, I got this book from my library called Hell's Half Acre. I love the cover, I love the name. It's like a true crime book that is talking about a serial killer family that took place many years ago, and I was very intrigued by it. However, I got to like 100 pages in and it was just boring me. Nonfiction is always a hit or miss with me because of this. Like, I don't know necessarily what I need from nonfiction to make it more interesting, because I felt like the writing was well done and I didn't find anything particularly bad about it. I just wasn't also interested in it either, which was a shame because, like I said, I love this cover, love the name, and I felt like it was so promising, but I decided to DNF it. And then I also DNF'd this book, which is called All the Feels. I got this one from my library as well because of the plus size representation. I really want to try and read more romance with plus size women in it, and this one was a no on all fronts for me. I really didn't even get past 50 pages and I just couldn't do it anymore. I ended up looking at the Goodreads reviews of it, and people were saying that the thing that I had a problem with didn't stop until like you got to the 25% mark of the book. I was honestly just so off put by that I was like, I am not stomaching through 25% of the book just to hopefully have it be really good. The male love interest in this book is, he's a jerk. And not just a jerk as in like tough to love and protects himself from others and has that broody kind of keep to himself and maybe makes rude comments every once in a while vibe. It was like cruel. They were comparing her to a bird because of her body, and they were talking down to her. They were calling her ridiculous, and I was like, really? Really? Like, this is supposed to be plus size representation and we're comparing her to a bird? No. And then I tried a different book from the same author. I can't remember the name of it. I'll put it right here on the screen. But I tried this one. I love anything with a redhead on the cover. Obviously, I'm a redhead, so I just gravitate towards these kind of books. I also was just hoping that All the Feels was a one-off. Maybe this one would be better. Maybe it could have been, but I'm realizing very quickly that I don't find Hollywood interesting at all. I really don't like to read about actors and actresses and stuff like that. Not my thing. I don't know. I just wasn't feeling it, so I decided after I think I got to 20 pages in that one, I was like, no, I'm good. So those weren't great, but those were sprinkled in between the books that I did finish, which we're going to go to right now. Now, the month started off very strong. Very strong. I had high hopes. They blew out of the water. So happy to say. So the first book that I read was Sundial by Katrina Ward, and I absolutely love this author. She is amazing. She wrote The Last House on Needless Street, which, like I've told you guys before my wrap-ups, it was one of my favorite books of all time. It's still just one of my favorites. It's just so good. Anyways, not going to talk about that one. I'm going to talk about this one. This is her newest release, and I was kind of hesitant about both the description and the cover. Well, I think it's beautiful. It's just kind of like, what are you about? What's going on here? What is this? And then the description is about a mother who is basically afraid of one of her daughters. She has two daughters, and the one is just behaving strangely. She's having other behavioral issues, and she decides to take that daughter back to her family home, which is called Sundial, and kind of get to the bottom of things and kind of have a heart-to-heart and see if she can make a difference and all this stuff. And her marriage isn't great. There's some other things that are also coming into play. There's also a dual timeline, so you're also going back in time, and you get to learn about the main character, her name is Rob, herself. And this book, I flew through it. Honestly, I don't think it's that long. Well, I guess it's around 300 pages. So either way, she does such an amazing job. I think this honestly pushes ahead in my favorite books of hers. So I would say Sundial is my favorite work of hers, and then The Last House on Needless Street. That's how amazing this book is. It had twists, turns. It is technically a horror book, but I wouldn't say it was overly so for someone who doesn't love horror. I would say that this is probably a decent book to start off in the genre if you're new to it, but all around 5 stars for me. I absolutely loved this book. I did not see the ending coming whatsoever. Blew me out of the water, and I actually got it from my library, but I loved it so much that I ran out and I bought it myself because that's how much I loved it. So Katrina Ward is easily a request pre-order kind of author for me because she honestly can do no wrong. So the next one is a little bit of a throwback, and that is Scary Stories. So I actually found this at the library when I was there with my kids, and I grew up on these. I loved these. I read R.L. Stine books and stuff like that. So when I saw that they had put all 3 books together, I was like, I really want to reread this. It's just such a big memory of mine of growing up. So I wanted to reread it, and I did, and I still love it. Obviously, some of them are a little bit cheesy now that you're an adult, but I feel like it's pretty age appropriate for kids, and it brought me back in the best ways. And honestly, I wouldn't mind having this one on my shelf. So not a new book reread, but man, it was a good time. The next book is another library pick. I got this I Know Who You Are from Alice Feeney. I had heard about it, and this is the first 2-star of the month. Man, this book was all right. Again, it was about an actress, so I don't really love the whole like being on set and the details about acting and, you know, trailer scenes and stuff like that. I don't know. It's just not my thing. Don't really care for it. But regardless, I felt like it still had a pretty good plot. I feel like Alice Feeney does really well with thrillers. She can really make things unpredictable, and she definitely did. I don't want to say much more, honestly, other than I just wasn't really loving the book as it was, and then it ended like that. And honestly, it creeped me out in the worst ways. It just gave me the heebie-jeebies. No, not in a good way either. And, you know, I'm a horror girl. I love having the heebie-jeebies. I like being scared. This was a ride that I wanted to get off and quickly. Let's just put it this way. I own another Alice Feeney book that I have not read. There's also a couple at my library that I would really like to read. But I have not since reading this book because I just can't bring myself to figure out what else she has in store because this one scarred me so bad. So I don't know. The next one is Crossroads. This is one that I heard all over TikTok about, and that it was like really disturbing and really sad, and like basically a lot of the TikToks that I had seen was saying that it was the one that broke their heart the most. It was a bit of a letdown for me. Yeah, I believe I also gave this one either 2 or 3 stars. Let me check my Goodreads. I don't know why I'm guessing. It's right here. So I gave it 2 stars. So Crossroads is about a mother who is grieving the loss of her 22-year-old son. He was in a car accident and he died. And she finds that when she does certain things that I cannot be explicit about on YouTube, or they would probably give me the yellow, that she gets to be able to see him. And it just escalates from there. If you're truly interested in this book, I would look up trigger warnings, content warnings. I mean, that goes for all my books, always, all the time. No matter what book you're diving into, it's always a smart idea. But I would especially look them up for this book and also read the summary because, like I said, I can't be too specific on here. It is heartbreaking. A parent losing a child. Watching that desperation play out, just trying to get like any ounce of your child back. And I feel like all mothers can relate to the things that Chris was feeling and thinking, and, you know, just being on that level of grief. I think if we all try to put ourselves in those shoes, totally see where she's coming from. I feel like if she was able to have a bit more perspective, I think it's pretty obvious that your son wouldn't want you to do those kind of things. And instead of being lured in by this darkness, being able to have a bit more awareness to that. And I understand this might be part of where the heartbreak comes in, that she couldn't notice that she was so desperate, that she was doing these things. But at the same time, I feel like a little self-awareness and maybe some perspective on what her son would actually want, which she does have flickers of those thoughts. I feel like it would have made the story more interesting if there was a bit more of a battle within herself and being a little bit more torn than just watching someone go on this downward trajectory and straight into crashing and burning. Not a whole lot to be learned or liked about the book, in my opinion. I don't think it's bad. I just it didn't get the emotions from me that I think can be done. Now, last month I read This Thing Between Us. If you want a story about someone who is in a similar situation where they feel like they're being contacted by a loved one, of being desperate enough to want to contact them, and then also being conflicted with knowing that this isn't really what they would want, I would recommend This Thing Between Us. It was an exceptional book. I felt like that was really well done. The whole story in and of itself was a lot more, and even though Crossroads is a novella, it's meant to be short, it's meant to be quick, I just did not like it. Moving on. So happy to say, one of my new all-time favorites. This is Hex, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the author's name because I've heard it pronounced correctly and I just don't have faith in myself that I can do that. But this is another author, automatic buy, automatic reserve. Just so excited to see the works that they continue to put out. But I got this because of the cover. Absolutely loved this. And I believe all I had heard about it was that a witch has cursed a town. If you decide to give this book a shot, besides looking up content warnings, I would go into this rather blind, just knowing that a witch has cursed a town. That's what I did, and it blew me away. I know that there's a lot of videos on TikTok about, this is a book that I think about all the time. There aren't any books that I think about all the time, honestly, except for this one. So this witch named Catherine, she had brought her son back to life after he had died from a disease that was circulating at the time because it was hundreds of years ago. And people discovered that. They made her decide between her living daughter and the son that she had brought back. So she ended up killing her son. And then even after that fact, they ended up killing her, burning her at the stake. And then she ended up coming back and she cursed the town. I don't want to speak too much on this, but this was a super creepy read. Like, I still think about Catherine all the time. I still expect to see her around a dark corner at the middle of the night because this book has just truly stuck with me. It's sad, it's creepy, it's a little bit of self-made horror, in meaning that the horror that we create can be just from us as humans. So there's a little bit of everything going on here, a little bit paranormal, a little bit self-made, and I'm so happy. I was really hoping with a cover like this that it would be creepy, and it is. And if you want this cover, because there is a new one, I think if you go to Amazon, it's got a different one, and I particularly wanted this one because I love the cover. How many times can I say that? Anyways, yes, my Barnes & Noble had it in store, even though it was coming up online with the newer cover. So if you're looking for that one, I would check your local Barnes & Noble. Next one is a newer release, and it is Chloe Cates is Missing. I got this one from the library. So it is about a teenage girl who goes missing, and she had this huge following online. She's, think of a JoJo Siwa, that's basically what she's supposed to be in this book. And her stage name is Chloe Cates, but her real name is completely different. The family name is completely different. So the whole family dynamic is very, very rough in this book from the get-go. It is definitely one of those stories where if you have a problem with children being exploited online, this is going to do nothing but pour gasoline on that fire because, wow, there wasn't a character that I actually ended up liking in this book. They were all awful, just to varying degrees. However, I still liked watching this play out. It was a quick read for me. I flew through it, I think, in under a day, and it was really interesting. Fast-paced, lots of twists. Kept you guessing the whole time. I really enjoyed it. However, it really does tackle the hard look at exploiting kids online, having their presence online without their consent, things like that, and it just really dives deep into those. Obviously, this is a severe case. The mother had a mommy blog, an actual blog, website, typing, and she had got famous from that, and she had made it CC and me, meaning Chloe Cates, and she gets famous and her daughter becomes Chloe Cates, who is, the JoJo Siwa of this book, and all this blows up. It got very confusing to me, what they were talking about at some times. Sometimes I could tell that they were talking about Instagram. Sometimes I could tell they were talking about YouTube. Sometimes they were talking about the blog. It was just very muddied. And I know that starting out being a content creator, it was kind of new to everybody. Blogs had been the form that people got really popular and famous on. But then YouTube and other platforms started getting big. So there was just all these different interchangeable type things happening with terminology. And so they referenced the blog a lot, but a blog is not a vlog. So there's like, I don't know. It was just a little hard to keep track of what they were talking about. I gave it 5 stars. Another one that I would be happy to have on my shelf, even though, like I said, I did not like a single character of this book, which is a rare find for me. So the next one is one that I've had sitting around in my own collection for a while, and it is Come With Me. I've heard that this is just a really sad and kind of heartbreaking book, and man, did it hit it. So when people are talking about Crossroads and about books that make them really sad, I did not get that vibe from that one, but I did get it from this one because wow, oh, wow. And it is marketed as a horror book, I'm pretty sure, but I would say it's more of like a paranormal thriller. The only thing that I would say that would knock it into the horror category is the vivid and just extremely graphic descriptions of crime scene photos. All I want to get into. I don't want to spoil anything basically, but just know that there are some vivid descriptions that are just really hard to read in this book. But other than that, it's pretty much a thriller that has some paranormal aspects to it. And I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I really did. It was a good read for me. It did feel like a little bit of a marathon. I don't feel like it needs to be nearly, almost 400 pages. I feel like it just had a little bit of fluff in there that wasn't necessary. But nonetheless, it's about a man whose wife is killed in a mass shooting, and afterwards he gets a box delivered to their home from her stuff at work, and he finds a receipt for a motel in there. A motel that is states away, and that was during a time where he was at a work thing, out for the weekend himself. So he's wondering what his wife was doing there, and he starts putting together a ton of different pieces of information. And I feel like this is a really great book. It is really sad though. I feel like it's definitely heavy in a lot of ways, but it was done really well. I have told you guys before, I love reading about grief. This is no exception. I felt like Aaron, which is the main character of this book, the husband, I felt like he just had a very realistic description of grief and what it looks like trying to live your life out after you've lost your partner, and what I'm sure a lot of people have to constantly hear and deal with. And I just really enjoyed this book all around. It was really good, and it had a twist at the end that shattered me. I would give that one a 4.5 if Goodreads allowed that, the half stars, just because, like I said, it was a little bit wordy, but everything else considered, rounded it up to a 5 because I enjoyed it that much. Next up is another book that I bought and then read almost immediately, and it is You've Lost a Lot of Blood, and this is by Eric LaRocca. I hope I'm pronouncing that last name right. I'm terrible, and I should be good because people mispronounce my first name all the time, so I don't want to upset anybody because I know how it feels. But this is by the same author who wrote Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. I believe they also have another book coming out later this year. I don't even know if I've ever read a description about Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. Just like I didn't even read a description about this book before I bought it. And one time was enough for me. One time. I did give it 4 stars, I believe. Yes, I gave it 4 stars. It's really fast paced. Obviously, it's a pretty short book. And I just felt like everything as a whole, I liked how it was set up. I found it very interesting. There's also a book within the book, so pretty cool. That's what I'm talking about. But this is definitely deep end level horror. Definitely not something you just dip your toes in to, test the waters and see if horror is your genre. I did like this. I gave it 4 stars, but one and done for me. Don't ever need to read it again. I honestly bought it because of the cover. I love the artwork on their books. I think it's phenomenal. It's the perfect level of like art and creepy for me. So that's the reason why I bought it off of that alone. Didn't read the description. So the next to last one is Good Neighbors. I got this from Barnes & Noble. It was their book club pick of the month that I had bought it. But it kind of sat around because I just feel like the cover is so-so to me. I don't know. Honestly, it was the excerpt that is the reason why I bought it. After seeing that it was also their book club pick, I felt like it was interesting enough to give it a shot, but the cover just never really drew me in. However, somebody that I watch for their horror recommendations was giving their top picks of the month or something like that, and he had recommended this, and I was like, okay, now it's time to give it a shot. Let's go. And wow. So this is about a suburban block with lots and lots of drama. So you can see this is kind of what we're working about. They call it the Crescent a lot. So it's just a street that has a bunch of houses on it. It's on the outside of a park here. So they have this crescent-like shaped street. And then these are all the families and all their kids' ages and everything else. So it has various maps and various logs of who's living there at the time. As the story progresses, it's not something that you have to like keep referring to or anything. I just felt like it was a really cool touch, and I love seeing stuff like this. It just goes to show me that the author is like really into their story, and I find that pretty promising. But that's a look at like the physical setup of the book, and it's basically about a family that moves in that is not necessarily worried about the different kind of expectations of suburbia, how they look, how they treat their house and stuff like that. And just all about that kind of unfolding in the neighborhood. But then something happens where that family is blamed for an accident, and basically the whole neighborhood is against them. When you start this book off, it's the typical suburban BS that you would expect to find in some kind of book like this, you know, just the neighborhood drama, things like that. But it escalates so quickly. So quickly. It gets dark really quick, and it has a sinister ending. Honestly, I feel like this might be one of the best thrillers that I've ever read to date. Like I said, it does get a little dark at the end, but I wouldn't say that it pushes it over into horror or anything like that. But it is just, it gets dark and twisty. It's so much more than what you think it is at the beginning. And when I got to like the last 80 pages of the book, I knew that this would either land it in the honorable mentions part of my year or either in my top books of 2022, and with the ending, top books of 2022. Down to the last page. It's just phenomenal. So if you like thrillers, I know it's not the most exciting cover, but promise you when I tell you what's in here, chef's kisses. So very last book of the month, which just took me by surprise. I decided to order this because I was seeing it literally all over TikTok, and I was like, you know what? I haven't had a romance book in quite a bit. So we're going to give it a shot. And I got Flock by Kate Stewart. And, yeah, you could say I liked it. I don't know if you can see all the tabs along here. But, yeah. Wow. So I went into this pretty blind, other than, you know, seeing the various things on TikTok from the different sounds and stuff and people talking about their favorite quotes. And I would kind of tell you to do the same thing. Obviously, look up content warnings, make sure you're comfortable with it. But if you are and you move forward, I would just kind of let it take you on the journey that it has to itself. So there's two love interests in this book, and I felt like they balanced each other really well. You have Sean, who's like the wholesome love interest who like pays attention to details and is like warm and cuddly and sweet and romantic and stuff like that. And then you have Dominic, who's like the complete opposite. Now, he is a bit of a jerk at first, but not in the way like I had talked about earlier with that book that I had DNF'd. He's not cruel. He's not openly like trying to put the main character down in any kind of way. It's just more of that kind of like Jon Snow brooding, I don't want it kind of, you know, take on things, like just very standoffish, you know? So I felt like they balanced each other out well. It definitely got weird and strange for me. I'm not the biggest lover of smut. If a romance book doesn't have it, I have absolutely no problem with it. And sometimes like I'm just like, can we get back to the part where someone gets their feelings hurt? Like, I don't know. I would just rather read about romance and emotions and stuff like that than explicit scenes, but that's just me. That's what I like. This book does have plenty of explicit scenes. I didn't mind them. They're all right. Like I said, I don't read the books for that, so I like where this plot is going, and I think it didn't answer all my questions because there's 2 more books in the series. From what I understand, they're going to absolutely wreck me, and I'm looking forward to it. So, I had a good time with this one. It didn't end the way that I thought it was. I went through it really quickly. I read this in a day as well, and I just really liked it. Also, the parent aspect in that book, 10 out of 10. That is always a winner for me. But those are all the books that I read in the month of March. I want you guys to let me know down in the comments what your favorite read was of the month. Also, if you made it to the end of the video, why don't we put the car emoji for Flock? And then, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And as always, thanks for watching.